occurred. Last week, Judge Schoeman ruled the authorisation certificate to centralise all charges was valid. Ruling on the matter, she said there was no prospect of a successful appeal. Schoeman said the jurisdiction matter should have been raised in the pre-trial conference and not now. The defence is challenging the jurisdiction of the Port Elizabeth High Court as some of the 97 sex offences were allegedly committed in various parts of the country. Omotoso's lawyer, Peter Dauberman, will now approach the Supreme Court of Appeal and lodge an application to appeal Judge Schoeman's ruling. The trial has been postponed to early October. Well, for more on this story, we cross to our reporter, Jade Lee Polser, who's standing by for us in Port Elizabeth. Jade Lee, so Judge Schoeman has basically said she doesn't believe that there's any prospect of success in terms of the appeal, but Dauberman is still going ahead with it.
That's correct, Nompu, and I suppose that one could say that this is just another delaying tactic from the defence. Speaking to State Prosecutor Irma Schoeman earlier on, he also uttered those same sentiments, saying that even though the defence is going to petition to the Supreme Court of Appeal, they know as the state that it will be unsuccessful. But just listening to Judge Irma Schoeman's ruling this morning, she detailed how the defence should have actually, mentioned in the pre-trial conference that they had a problem with the jurisdiction and that the Port Elizabeth High Court should not hear all the charges or offences on the indictment with regards to the witness, the people in the trial, Timothy Omotoso and his two co-accused, Lusanda Sulani and Zuki Swasito. And throughout these 2 weeks, we've been hearing a lot of applications being submitted by the defence, submissions with regards to the authorisation of the certificate that was signed off by the former NPA head Sean Abrams. There was a lot of confusion about that, whether it still stands, seeing that the trial is now de novo, which means starting afresh, and also with the jurisdiction matter as well. We saw them also coming out strongly, that being the defence, saying that the Port Elizabeth High Court should not hear all the counts on the indictment. There's 97 charges, but of that, it's 63 main counts against Timothy Omotoso and his two co-accused, and then 34 alternative. But only seven of that 63 charges and counts happened in Port Elizabeth, and all the others happened elsewhere in the country. So the defence really saying there that this would be very unfair for their clients to centralise the case and have it here. So Judge Irma Schoeman took a long time in her ruling, going over the jurisdiction, going over the authorisation certificate that was issued by former NPA head Sean Abrams, and also saying that if the defence really had an issue with the jurisdiction in the matter, they should have voiced their opinions during the pre-trial conference and before the trial started afresh.
So, Jade Lee, based on that rationale then, what about some of the incidences which were supposed to have taken place in Israel?
Nompu, can you repeat that question for me?
Yes. So from the story that you've been telling us, apparently some of the alleged incidents happened in Israel. So, what about that? Because Israel is another country.
That's very correct. And we saw the defence saying there, the defence, Peter Dauberman, lawyer representing Timothy Omotoso, that in that light, how do they now centralise all the cases if there was an offence that occurred in Israel? But the state prosecutor, Irma Schoeman, when he was making his final arguments, heads of arguments yesterday, he said that no, that this was not an issue and that this should be centralised in all the charges and formulate within all the charges, all the 97 charges. So the Israel offence should not be an issue. It should still be centralised in the Port Elizabeth High Court. And also saying that Timothy Omotoso was arrested at the Port Elizabeth Airport. He was, he fled Bloemfontein. That's when the special assignment had their huge expose on him, and the Hawks were trailing him. And when they finally nabbed him in Port Elizabeth, there were several offences that occurred here, and several of the girls from the Jesus Dominion International Church, they were the ones that allegedly were victimized in PE. So saying that irrespective of the fact that some of the witnesses were yet to take to the stand reside in other provinces, and irrespective of the fact that some of the accounts happened in other provinces, Port Elizabeth does have the jurisdiction to hear all the counts in its entirety. But defense lawyer Peter Dauberman is adamant that this will not be the case. They will petition to the Supreme Court of Appeal, and he's hoping that the centralisation of all the charges will not occur in Port Elizabeth. This court will not hear all the charges on the indictment.
And one last thing, Jade Lee, the supporters of both the victims and Mr. Omotoso, have they still been coming out in their numbers?
Well, we've seen, over the 2 weeks since the trial has started de novo, several of Timothy Omotoso's congregants have come out in their numbers. They've been singing praise songs outside court, affirming their support for their pastor, who they believe is innocent. But we've also seen civil society, civil organizations, as well as political parties, the ANC Women's League also at the forefront, supporting the alleged victims in the matter and staying steadfast with that. So we've seen both, groups really coming out in the numbers, picketing, protesting, hoisting placards, affirming their support. And we've also spoken to the Jesus Dominion International Church members, Nompu, asking them, do they really believe in his innocence, even after all these allegations have come to the fore? And several of the congregants are adamant that Timothy Omotoso is a righteous man. They will continue supporting him, and they're hoping that he will be released soon.
All right, Jade Lee, thank you very much for that report. My colleague Jade Lee Polster reporting there from the Port Elizabeth High Court. We're going to go